everybody, welcome back to Furniture Flipping Teacher. I'm Lauren, and if you're new here, since I have been in a huge transition, welcome to my new workshop. I know from this angle it does not look any different than it did when I was in my former location. It's actually in the same building, it's just a different bay, but a lot has changed over the past 8 weeks. So if you haven't been caught up yet over the past 8 weeks, or you missed out on a video, I'll link some playlists down below for you. But ultimately, today I am back at it with furniture flips. I have been missing flipping furniture so much over the past 2 months, so I am super excited to get back into it. This is going to be a custom job here. This actually came from a client who bought a former piece of mine, and I am going to be showing you exactly how to take oak furniture like this and change the look up just a little bit. A lot of the times this orangey golden oak tone isn't very desirable right now. It's not very trendy. So I'm going to show you how to get rid of that look and how to transform it into something that is trendy and may fit into your home decor just a little bit more. So as you guys know, I always start by removing the hardware. Some of this hardware is actually like missing pieces and broken, so I'm gonna be fully getting rid of this hardware. My client does want new hardware attached on here, and I'm just opening this top drawer here and noticing that it's Broyhill, so it's a really good brand. I always love it when I can work with quality furniture that has good name brands that I've like heard of before. So I'm just gonna go ahead and remove this hardware by unscrewing the screws behind the drawers. Also going to go ahead and remove this drawer here so that we can make sure that we're getting in all the areas. This piece looks overall very clean. I'm not sure if she got it from a thrift store or if she had it on hand already, but she brought it to me in this condition and it's looking really good. I mean, it definitely needs refinished for sure, but it's got some good bones. And I want to say, like, so far, everything that I see is solid oak. So I'm hoping that this is all solid oak. I think the top might be veneer. Can't quite tell from the inside, but I think it may be veneer just because we've got some different wood grains going different ways, but that could just be how they constructed it. This is a little bit trickier to tell because the back of it is also finished. So I can't like go behind there and see if it is unfinished or if it is like a veneer edge or if it's just real wood. So either way, I always like to be super careful when I am, you know, stripping a piece of furniture, whether I'm sanding it or using a stripper, mostly when sanding because I never want to bust through the veneer and potentially cause more work for myself. There are so many different ways to strip wood or to strip furniture, and I've shown several different ways here on the channel, and so it's really all about what project you're working on and what personal preference you have. I kind of have a mix of personal preference, kind of depending on the project that I'm doing. So I have in the past just sanded everything to raw wood for my stripping method. I have used acetone as my stripping method and then sanded after. I have done the Green Easy, I have done the Citrus Strip. Pretty much tested a ton of different options. I think my favorite combo so far is the acetone, but it can get pretty fumey. So if you're looking for something that's not as fumey, but still does a really good job, the Green Easy stripper is really, really great. You just have to wait a little while for it to activate. So other than that, I don't have any complaints about the Green Easy. I've used it with stripping the stain off of something and it works. I think for this table specifically, I am going to be using a combo of sanding and acetone. There are a lot of little indents and divots and details on this piece of furniture that is going to be really hard for me to use my sander inside of all of those crevices. So in those areas, I'm thinking I will go ahead and use the acetone to begin with, and then I'll go back and start sanding. But like on the top, I think I may just, I don't know. I think I'm just gonna start with acetone, honestly. It does go pretty quickly, and I kind of enjoy the satisfaction of stripping a piece of furniture. So let's get out the acetone. So in my experience, these are the things that I have found that work well for me when I am using acetone as a stripper. We've got gloves, we've got glasses, we've got paper towels, we've got acetone, we've got a little container to hold the acetone, we've got a chip brush, and we've got a respirator. Plus, my door is open, so I'm gonna get some airflow going in here as well. I definitely strongly recommend that you have the respirator and the gloves and the glasses. Those are the safety mechanisms for this project. And then of course, airflow, good ventilation is super important as well. So we're gonna get started. This is gonna be super fun and super satisfying. I am gonna go ahead and glove up. These are like heavy duty gloves. I'll link them down below. I love them because they're pretty much like regular vinyl gloves, but they are meant for heavy duty things. So I don't really feel any like acetone eating through these at all when I am utilizing them. I switch them out every so often, but overall, not too much. And also, in a bit more of a conscious effort to keep my new workspace clean, I am going to lay out some craft paper here to protect the floors from any acetone that may fall off the edge. I could clean it off the floors later, but I think this little preventative measure will actually be a bit easier in the long run, because in reality, I don't know if I would ever actually clean it up later. You know what I mean? Okay, glasses on, gloves on, mask on. I'm gonna do a tiny bit without my mask just so I can explain without the mask on my face, and then I will put this mask on, I promise. Okay, so what I like to do, and again, do it however works best for you. This is just how I've found works best for me. So I pour a little bit of acetone into a separate container, and then I will take my chip brush, and I like to work in very small sections, and I will just take my chip brush and begin to brush it on until I begin to see it kind of activating. You want to kind of get a good amount on there. You'll kind of start to see the finish dissolve away, and that is when I like to take my paper towel that I have on hand and wipe back the acetoned area, and then that's when you can really start to tell the difference of the tones of the wood. So this has been removed, this hasn't been removed. Love this method. I will preface and say that acetone might not work on every single surface that you utilize it on. I did another oak coffee table and you really couldn't tell that big of a difference. Could that have been like the finish that was over the top of it? Yes. There's so many different factors that make strippers work and not work. So really the ultimate thing is you just have to test it. It could work over painted surfaces to strip those off. Honestly, you just have to test it yourself to see if this is going to be the right method for that specific piece. I'm going to mask up and get through the top of this so that we can keep on going. So this little, like what, third of the top of the table took me maybe like 5 minutes to strip. It looks really good. And then when I sand it, it'll also like lighten up a lot as well. So I'm gonna continue on with the rest of the top. Also, another reminder that if you are using the paper towel method, whatever towels you use acetone with, you need to lay out flat for a few days wherever you can in your workshops, because they could spontaneously combust. So it's important that you kind of lay them out flat so they can dry out completely before you then throw them away. And you can also soak them in water so that that doesn't happen. You need to make sure that you do that. Now that I got the top all done, I am going to be like rotating it and standing it up on its sides. I prefer having a flat surface to use the acetone on, that way it doesn't drip a whole lot. I have seen people just do it as is and just, you know, kind of keep catching the acetone. So totally personal preference, but I'm gonna flip it on its side. Okay, I got all of the acetone on the entire surface of the coffee table, and it is all stripped now, at least the first layer of like the sealer and the colored stain. So this is what it's looking like now. It's a lot lighter, but we've still got a little bit of work to do before I'll be ready to go ahead and change the color of the piece. This is only step one. And I did want to mention the reason I didn't go ahead and clean the piece before doing the stripper was because acetone kind of acts as like a cleaner. I wouldn't need to clean with a degreaser if I'm then just going to go ahead and strip off that that layer of sealer. But it's a little bit of a different story in my opinion when I'm sand stripping, because I don't want to grind that stuff down into the surface like the oils and things. So if I'm going to strip sand with my sander, then I would clean before. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense on why I kind of skipped that when I usually say do not skip cleaning. That needs to be your second step after removing the hardware. So I'm gonna kind of clean up. Remember, I need to leave these rags all laid out, and then I'm gonna go ahead and grab my Surf Prep sander out, and we are going to start to sand everything smooth and lighten everything up. All right, I've got my sander all ready, and I am gonna be using a 120 grit, and I've got a squishy foam pad interface pad here, and then I just put my sandpaper on top. So Surf Prep has several different options for this. This specifically is 2 different pieces where I just Velcro it on. They also have foam interface pads that have basically like the layer of sandpaper already on it. But if you don't have those, these squishy guys can help you just contour to the edges that may not be completely flat. And a really cool thing is they have them on more than just this Surf Prep 3x4. You can get them for your orbital sander, your mouse sander, your square sanders, things like that. So be sure and check out their website. I'll link it down below, and you can use my code FFT10 for 10% off your whole entire purchase. And I love surf prep and I love sharing about products that I love. So you can find all of that down below in the description. I am so excited to see what is kind of underneath this last layer. We're getting close. So I got both drawers sanded down here, and I just wanted to show you the difference between what it looked like before, which is what this table still looks like, and then what it's going to look like. I may still have a few areas that I need to do some hand sanding on, but overall, this is the lightened look. I'm gonna do the same thing with the actual table base itself, and then we'll be able to move on to staining. Don't mind my voice. I am a little bit sick, but I'm feeling good, so it's okay. All right, I am going to be sanding with a 220 grit now. I went with a 120 grit over the entire surface of this coffee table, and now 220 grit to smooth everything out and make sure that there are no sanding swirls, because I'm gonna be staining this and I don't want any of the sanding swirls to pop out. So going from a lower sanding grit, working my way up to a higher sanding grit is how we're gonna get the smoothest look, but we don't wanna go too high up to like a 320 or 420 because we still want this stain to be able to be absorbed into the surface and it not be super streaky. So this will be the last round of the sanding, and then we'll be able to move on to stain. Next up, I am going to wipe back all of the dust on this piece. Everything is all sanded and it's looking so good. I love the satisfaction of having it all the way stripped down to bare wood. This took me over the course of about 2 days, and I am really happy with the results. It did take a little bit longer because of all of the details. I had to do some hand sanding, as you saw, but it's all finished, and now we are get ready for some stain. I am going to be using a tack cloth. A tack cloth is like a cloth almost type of material, and it is going to help me grab all of the sanding dust. We don't want any sanding dust on our surface because we want this stain to go on very nice and smoothly. This is so sticky that I like to typically use a glove or even kind of keep the tack cloth in the plastic because I don't like how it gets on my hands. But basically you just rub it over the surface like so, and then it'll begin to get up all of that dust. Even though there's very minimal dust on this because of my dust extractor, there's still gonna be some leftovers. So this is just an extra step. Sometimes I use a tack cloth, but other times I use like water with a rag. Ultimately, the tack cloth I think is gonna be your best bet. And I've also seen people using like denatured alcohol as well, which will really help pick up all that dust too. And then if like one side gets fully dirty, you can continue opening it up and it has like more sides. It's a pretty big cloth overall. I've got one last step before I move on to staining that I forgot that I needed to do, but I'm remembering before moving on. My client wanted these little nubbies to be cut off. So I am just gonna kind of line it up with the top of this curve here. And then I'm gonna put some painter's tape on it, and I'm going to just remove that with my jigsaw. And I'll do a little bit of sanding to smooth that out a little bit. Overall, looks great. Now I'm gonna do that on all 4 sides. All 4 sides have 2 each, so that's 8 total cuts. With these types of cuts, it's just important to go nice and slow and follow the line. For the staining portion of this table, we need a few different materials. So I've got my main material, which is the Lily Moon Paint Smoky Gel Stain in the color Mudslide. This is the color that my client chose based off of the previous piece that she bought because these are gonna go in the same space and it had accents of this specific stain color. Then I've got my blue sponge here. This guy is gonna help us apply. I've got my mister bottle, which will help the stain go on really nice and smooth. Then I've got some yellow painter's tape. This is going to help me mask off the areas that I don't want the stain at the time. And then I've also got gloves just to keep my hands clean. So before I put my gloves on, I am going to use my yellow tape here. And I have found over the years, over the time that I have been refinishing furniture, that whenever you're applying stain, a lot of the times it's important that you're moving it in the direction of the wood grain. And so when I have different ways upon my spaces that is different wood grain patterns, so like the sides are going this way but the rest of it's going this way, I like to tape off those areas so that I'm not getting them over here, especially when you're working with water-based, because it is a little bit less forgivable, although in my opinion I like using it better because it's less messy and it's water-based. So I'm just gonna tape off the areas that I don't want my stain on right now. I'm gonna begin with the large space here in the middle. So we're all gonna be going this direction with the wood grain. So now that I've got that taped off, I can start on the parts that are going side to side. So putting water onto the top of the surface that then I'm going to stain is kind of like a pre-stain for the water-based stain. This is just gonna help it go on really nice and smoothly and help a little bit less with less streaking. So I just like to spray it onto my surface like so. And then also spray the actual sponge a tad bit as well. And then I keep this on hand if I need any extra water. And then you can either place the stain onto the material or onto your sponge. It really doesn't matter. I'm gonna go ahead and do it on the material. And then with the blue sponge, we just move it back and forth and spread out the stain as much as we can, all in that one long stroke direction. I think this oak took this stain really well, so I'm gonna let that dry and then we'll be able to continue moving on. Like, it doesn't need to dry for too long, but just like at least dry to the touch so that then I can put tape over the next areas and continue on. Got the entire thing stained, and I could not have asked for an easier stain job. Like, everything is very uniform. There's no blotchiness, which is kind of rare for me for staining because sometimes the wood just doesn't cooperate. I didn't have to redo anything. I am so thrilled for my first project back for not having like any major hiccups so far. Next is going to be top coating. Now, this specific stain does have a top coat in it. However, it's not like the most protective top coat. You could get away with it if it was like on doors or something that's not gonna be like high traffic area. But because this is a coffee table, I'm just going to go ahead and top coat it with some satin clear coat just to make sure that it's got really great protection, especially on the top. But I want the sheen to match around the entire table, so I'll be top coating the whole thing. I'm gonna do a spray top coat because it's gonna be quicker and I'm gonna get the best coverage, and there's so many different, ornateness and indentions and things like that, and I think that spraying it is gonna be the easiest thing. So I'm gonna let this paint dry for a few hours before I go ahead and top coat it, and then I'll show you how to load up the spray gun and spray top coat. Top coat time, okay. I am going to be filling up my Wagner Flexio 5000 sprayer here with my top coat. I have actually just left this in here, and I'm keeping this specific spray nozzle only for my top coat. So I'm gonna be using the Varathane Poly in the satin sheen. I just really like how it really makes the pieces durable, and there's like a little bit of a shine, and it's gonna make it that much easier to clean and things like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and strain my top coat just like always, put that in there, and then whenever I have a gallon, I have learned that I'm not the best at pouring it well. So I put some painter's tape on the top to kind of make a little spout, and that'll help me pour it a lot easier and not get it all over the place. This top coat is quite thin, so it goes through the strainer very quickly. So not much wait time there. Super excited to be able to use my new spray booth for the first time. It's gonna be really nice not having to like bend over and, you know, maneuver things around so much. While that first coat of top coat is drying, I am going to hold up my end of the bargain and clean up this space right now. I'm really glad that I went ahead and laid this paper down, because all of this would have ended up on the actual floor. And then again, I probably would not have picked it up or cleaned it up anytime soon. We are on the home stretch. Welcome to my new staging wall. I thought I would go ahead and finish putting this table together over here. So I'm just gonna put the drawers in and then attach the new hardware. So I went with this adjustable hardware, which means there are no holes on the back. It's kind of this like slit that you put the bolts in, and then it's totally adjustable. So that means whether you have like 2.5-inch holes, or I think these go up to maybe like 4 inches, but there's always different sizes you can grab. You can use the same hardware. These are great for when you have like wonky sized hardware. Like a lot of the times the vintage pieces especially are different widths than maybe we have nowadays. So especially with like the 2 3/4 or 3 1/4, like just random measurements for hardware, and you don't want to fill them in, these adjustable pulls are perfect for that case scenario. All right, before I show the final reveal, let's take a look back at what this puppy looked like before I got my hands on it. It was old, outdated, but very solid, but that golden oak just needed to get out of here. So I stripped it down
And here is the final look. It is so much more warm and inviting and comfy and cozy. And I am absolutely loving the vibe that it's giving off now, that it is this much more warm tone of brown. I think it's going to pair really nicely with the piece that my client purchased from me. And I'm so glad that I was able to do this for her with a piece that she already had in her collection. I did charge $425 for this piece of furniture to be refinished. I do have a policy that I don't take on work under $400. It's just some personal preference that I have, that I just don't really want to be toying with smaller projects. And if someone wants to still pay that amount for a project like this, then more power to them. And I'm so glad that she did, because this table was super fun to work on. Although I think I probably still would have priced it at about that $425 to $450 range, even if I didn't have that policy, because this one was very intricate. I needed to strip it down. I have found that stripping pieces is more time consuming than just sanding them down and painting them. So keep that in mind when you're pricing out commission work. This is going to last her for some time, and I'm so glad that I was able to give it a new life, and it is going to be able to stay in her family, hopefully, for years and years to come. I spent around $20 on stain, probably $10 in acetone. The hardware was about $25 for the 5-pack, among some miscellaneous costs like cleaning supplies and sandpaper, things like that. So we're probably all in right around $70, $75. So that is gonna give me a total profit of right around $350, which I'm super, super stoked with. This took me quite a bit longer than it would have usually taken me. I decided to do step by step over the course of like 4 or 5 days because I was sick, but I got it done, and I'm so, so happy with the results. I'm so happy to be back flipping. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and were able to see how you can transform furniture to look just like you want it, even if it doesn't look like that to begin with. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next Thursday for another furniture flip, and I'll see you on the flip side.